Everybody else is on top of it.
Alright, let's give this a shot. Hello there, I'm EnviroBoy, and now my thing looks different. I decided that I should, if I'm gonna do this, like, oh man. This stuff is good here. Yeah, okay, good. Our looks like audio is working. I hope. I tried changing some stuff. I tried updating a few things. Tried to go ahead and experiment a little bit with some overlays. Tried to do some different things with different, like, auto mods and stuff like that, just to try and learn how to be better at this whole streaming thing. And I have no idea if this is all going to translate well, but you can't progress if you don't try things, right? One of my favorite personal mottos is if you want real improvements and real results, you got to put in real effort. So here I am trying something. I don't know how it'll all pan out. I don't know if the audio levels are okay. I'm looking and it looks like music's probably a little loud, so I'm gonna try turning that down a little bit. Yeah, I have no idea how it's all gonna work out, but we'll just give it a try. And I don't know, if you see something off, then go ahead and let me know, and I'll try and fix it. Try and get it better. But yeah, we got a bit of a new look going on here. Don't worry, this is just the chatting one. I didn't want to have this much stuff going on when I'm actually doing stuff, so this'll calm down once we actually get in and do stuff. But yeah, I don't know, it's interesting. I don't know that I'm necessarily super into the blue aesthetic for me, but it was one of the free ones, and I was like, well, we'll just play around with the free one for a little bit. And if I like it, then we can think about buying a more pleasing one for myself. I keep looking at it because it's just different. I'm not used to seeing all of this in my periphery here, but nah, I think it'll be good. I'm trying to, I do want my stream to grow. I've been pretty open about the fact that I don't know that I really ever intend for this to be a super big primary income thing. But that said, it's fun, and it's fun seeing it grow. And so I figure I should probably, put in the effort necessary to achieve exactly that. So here we are. We're going to give it a try. Welcome. Hopefully everyone's having a good day. I know it's been a pretty sunny, happy day for me so far, and hopefully it's the same for everyone else wherever you are. Even if it's not sunny, hopefully it's at least happy for all of you. I mean, that's all we can really hope for, isn't it? That's the goal for all of our lives. So anywho, all right, let's bring us over to the new live scene here. There we go. So yeah, you can see we got a little border going on around. I wonder if you can nah, the mouse is, I'm gonna try and frame it. There it is. We got a new border going around there. I'm trying to do it on the screen, but yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it looks interesting. And then there's going to be also along the right side here will be our chat ticker. I decided to add that so you can actually see the chat, because I'm like, hey, all of the real big boy and big girl streamers have their chat going on. So I'm like, well, I guess I ought to try and do some things to stick with the time. So there we are. So yeah, we'll give it all a shot. And we'll just see how it all works out. But at any rate, thank you for being here. Today we are going to do some writing, and then we'll be doing some gaming, as we always do. Writing today is going to be working on our campaign. We're going to go back to doing that. I really like taking the time to do other writing projects besides just working on the long form campaign. But I also really like coming back to this long form campaign. I think it's a really fun project. I think it naturally gives us a wide variety of things to talk about, especially when sharing notes on different approaches to being a dungeon master and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'm excited to work on it a little bit. I think it'll be fun. So to start us off, I'm just going to do what I always do and just give a basic rundown of how this all works. This is mostly for the sake of the VODs, so that anyone going back and watching these, if they're not familiar with my world inherently, if they haven't watched a whole lot previously, then they can get an idea about what the deal is with my world. So everything that I'm doing is pure homebrew. We're doing a homebrew campaign in a homebrew world. And that world of mine is called Zaoria. It's a fantasy world that I have been working on for years and years. It's just been a constant project of mine to be, whenever I'm in the mood to write fantasy fiction and create and do some world building, it pretty much goes into this world. And the campaign we're working on at this point with it is a Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition campaign that we're working on. Yeah, so that kind of guides how a lot of the stuff gets structured. But the basic idea of the world is that it's just a fantasy world. It doesn't explicitly have to be D&D, but I mean, D&D is just the system that I play with these days. So that's how I set it up. But yeah, so we've got this world, and the nature of my world is that it's a post-apocalyptic type of world. And so basically what happened is, if you were to imagine all of the different mortal realm with the ethereal planes and the elemental planes and all that stuff, if you were kind of to imagine all of those as being like a jar of different waters and oils and layers of sand and all that kind of stuff all mixed in together, then they form the layers. If you imagine that's kind of what the world normally is, there's an event in history called the Unhinging, in which it's like if someone were to have taken that jar and just given it a good shake so that all the layers got intermingled and messed up and everything was just kind of all chaos for a while. That resulted in the world just being a complete and utter mess. The mortal plane had all kinds of rips and tears to all kinds of different realms opened into it, and as a result, there's all this magical radiation that was causing all these issues within the world, as well as just all kinds of weird creatures that didn't belong in the mortal plane getting thrown into the mortal plane. And the sort of resulting effect of that is that the entire world became a very dangerous place to try and survive in. Most humanoids during that event kind of fled to one of these handful of cities you can kind of see dotted around here. Those were the particularly fortified cities, and they all kind of made their way there to try and survive, and left the rest of the world to fall into complete ruin. And then, that's just kind of how the world was for a while. All of the campaigns that I like to write usually happen about a couple thousand years after that event, when there are a lot of efforts now taking place to try and reclaim a lot of that lost area. And so it results in campaigns being very focused around exploring forgotten and abandoned societies and all that kind of stuff. And so it makes for a lot of really fun sort of lost, archaeologic type of things, which is really up my alley. And so when I'm writing campaigns for that, it tends to be the best way for me to approach it, because that keeps me passionate and it brings interest to my players. So that's the nature of the world that we're working on. The particular campaign that we're writing takes place, you can see in my world here, we have a lot of areas, but the campaign that we're doing takes place within this little hex of space. Is sort of the environment that this whole thing takes place in. I figured this would be a fun one to write a campaign in, because we can see we've got plains, mountains, and forests, which give us a lot of different environments to work with, and create some very diverse dungeons that we can work on. The basic premise of the campaign is that this city up here, Fossvik, and this city down here, Moffafetting, are trying to establish or reestablish a trade route that, rather than having to do trade through the one established trade road that kind of has to go all the way around here and takes months to go along, their goal is to try and establish a new trade route that goes pretty much straight down. And our players will start off as part of that sort of effort, part of that crew that's doing that. So we can kind of zoom in here, and this is our region map, the map that we use for pretty much the entirety of the campaign, right? And we can kind of see the progress that's been made, and we get down to this point right around here. Our players are part of this contingency, and they're kind of going about their business, trying to sort of map out and find a safe route through all of the crazy stuff that happens in the wilds. When this whole exploration group is confronted by a dragon. Turns out the dragon is the sort of keeper of these Goldwind Plains over here. Dragon sort of oversees and makes sure that everything is as it should be in those plains. And when he starts seeing all these humanoids kind of coming in and doing stuff, he gets pretty irritated about that, and he's all like, "Oi, I don't like this." And so, there's kind of an impasse for at least a little bit there. The leader of the group, which our players are none of them. Our players just sort of turn into the task force to handle the missions that come up from this. But the leader of the group says, "Look, we really need to do this. We're trying to establish, a trade route. We're just trying to rebuild the world." And the dragon, being compassionate, will say, like, "Okay, I'll cut you a deal. Been trying to get access into this one place called the Hall of Wisdom. It's down over there. It's sealed up. I need some keys if I want to bypass the magical locks that are on there. So if you can find me those keys and get me into there, I will let you build your trade route, and you can go ahead and do your little silly humanoid trading and all that stuff." So our players, being, the good adventurers that will answer a call to adventure, will accept that task, and it'll become the player's responsibility to try and find those keys. And thus the adventure begins. Our players will do some research up here in our city of Novotroykladny, our little established village for them to go and have city-type encounters in. They'll go there, do a little bit of research, and find that the first key was stashed in the mountains among all of the giant societies, the giant tribes. So they go up there, have some misadventures, dodging and exploring through different giant structures, and they go up and do that kind of stuff and eventually find that first key. The next step after that is to find the second key, obviously. The second key, turns out, is with the abandoned dwarven city of Kagdaral, or so the research suggests. Players get down there, find out it's not so abandoned and is actually pretty overrun with Durgar. They have some fun trying to navigate all that stuff and figure out what to do about that. However they decide to handle it, there's information to be found that the key is most likely hidden within the vaults of Kagdaral, which are sort of the treasure vaults that the dwarves had established back in their day of being alive and everything. So they can go in there, and that's kind of where we're at right now. Their pathway to get to these vaults and eventually find that second key. That's what we've been working on. So we can pull up our sort of dungeon map here, and this dungeon I've been kind of explaining. It's kind of a singular dungeon, but really it's better to think about this as a chapter, right? Because within each chapter I'll do a handful of stages to the dungeon, right? If we were to consider it a single dungeon, I do a handful of chapters, or a handful of dungeons within this overarching chapter, where they can kind of go and experience a few different places as part of completing the next step. So for this route that they have to go through, they first have to go through an abandoned part of city that even the Durgar aren't bothering to maintain, because it's just too much hassle to try and keep all of the monsters that are below underground in the mountains with them at bay. And so they have to first travel through this sort of abandoned part of the city, this part of the city that's been abandoned for thousands of years, which is why it's kind of funny that everything looks like it's just like normal, but at the same time, if a place is completely abandoned for all those years, it might get worn down, but mostly it just gets dusty. So I figure, hey, there's no reason for it to not look like cities and stuff. So they go through that, and then the next stage of it is going through the tunnels themselves, which are a series of tunnels that the dwarves would have dug on the way to these vaults, as a way to sort of be confusing and challenging for a vault robber to try and get to. If you know the way and you know what you got to do to get there, no big deal. If you don't know the way, you're gonna be in trouble, and that's kind of the intent. Oh, excuse me. Friday. I'm a little dozy. But that's sort of the thing that we're working on right now. We're working on these tunnels. There's going to be sort of two sets of tunnels that they go through, and then what we're going to do is when we get to this second set, there's going to be something. I haven't decided exactly what it's going to look like, but there's going to be some sort of event in which all of their like their way back, is what I'm trying to say, gets cut off. And so the only way for them to get back is to go back above ground and travel through this valley, and we can kind of see the valley here, right? They have to travel through this valley to get back to the city. There's sort of like a back door to the city that they'll go into. And that'll be the last part of it, as a way to just sort of give them some surprises. But for right now, this is where we're at. We're working at this stage in the dungeon, and yeah, we're at the stage now. We've pretty much decided what type of stuff is going to be in each of these rooms, each of these chambers, and now we're at the point where we get to kind of do the fun part, which is sort of add all the descriptions and the details about everything that the players find, all the battles, all the treasures, all that good stuff. So I think this is going to be good, and this is going to be fun. So with all of that out of the way, I got to find a way to make those recaps a bit shorter. I feel like I just kind of go on and on. But I want to make sure everyone's caught up, like we're working on a project here, and it's all well and good if someone new is in the live audience here and they can just sort of ask what's up. and I can let them know. But it's even better. It's even better if, you know, if they're going back into the VODs and stuff, because they can't, you know, they can't just ask the question. So it's even better if I add this description there, so anyone going through the VODs can like sit there and be caught up without having to go back through hundreds of hours of streams that I've done. So yeah, so that's where we at. That's where we at, baby. That's where we're at. And I need to pull up. Let's see. That's what we were working on last time. We need to pull up. Oops, gotta hide that one in case any of my players are in there, because that's for their campaign, which is not the one that I am working on here, because I don't want to accidentally give away all the secrets for them. So here is where we are. Ooh, I'm looking over there. I like the way the chat ends up there. Like, you can kind of see that pretty well because we got all this blank space. Makes things look busier, but like not in a bad way. So neat. All right, cool. I'm enjoying this. You'll hear me as I'm going through, as we're streaming today and probably over the next few days, remarking on the appearance of my stream, because like I say, I'm just now trying to sort of explore with having all of these overlays and stuff like that, and it's a new world of interesting stuff for me to try and figure out how to make my stream look more, I don't know, professional is maybe a word for it. I don't know. I feel like there's nothing professional about what I do, but maybe that's just because I'm not good at recognizing it for myself. Hey Shadow, how's it going? Good to see you here. Good to see you here. And the other thing too is, because I was messing around with my scenes, let me know if the audio levels are weird. If like voice is too quiet or too loud or something, let me know. I tried to get it back where it was, but I don't know. I'm bad at this. I don't know what I'm doing, largely speaking. Alright, so in this room here, let's go ahead and do some stuff. Okay, good. Glad. Thank you, Shadow. I appreciate the feedback. I do my best to try and keep things there, but I just don't know. Like, I don't really have a good way to know how it comes across for everyone else. You know, like I don't know how it appears from the viewer standpoint. I mean, I can try and kind of hotwire and take videos and kind of do that, but I just, you never know. You never know how it comes across until after the fact. So anyway, this room, the first room we're going to work on, is a fun one because it's going to have our mini boss battle. And so we get to kind of experiment with a boss here. So the difficulty that we're going to do, the amount of this is just going to match up with one of our difficult battles, because it's only a mini boss. We don't want to have it be too much more difficult, because that's what the actual boss is going to be like. So for the mini boss here, we're just going to have it set to about 175 experience points of difficulty. Not 175, 1,750 XP. So we're going to set it there. And before I add descriptions, I'm just going to figure out exactly what the monster composition is going to be. So for our boss here, we have this crawl death priest going on here, and that's going to be our enemy. Crawl death priest. That's our sort of that's our dude here, and he's worth 1100 XP. And then we'll give him a couple minions to sort of flesh out the boss battle. I never like doing a boss battle that is only the boss, because I feel like that ends up being too easy, even if it's a particularly challenging boss, because our players can just sort of all surround him and just sort of wail on him one target there, while he, even if they have multiple attacks, sort of have to try and use one turn to focus on 4 or 5 people, while 4 or 5 people can all focus their turn on one guy. It just doesn't balance very well. Yeah, that's a good idea, Shadow. I probably should do that. And figure out how to do it. The thing I'm always worried about is like messing with feedback and messing up the VODs and stuff, but really what I should do is I should just try it and learn how to do that without messing things up. Is what I should do. There's a lot of things that I should do that really just revolve around me learning, but that's why today, for the first time, we're experimenting with like overlays and stuff. That's why we're giving all of that a shot today, because I'm trying to learn. I do want my stream to eventually look kind of professional and believable, that someone who knows what they're doing is here. So I gotta try. real results require real effort, dang it. So here we are. But let's see here. So we've got this Crawl Death Priest, who is just sort of like a mutated, horribly messed up dwarf guy who was one of the keepers of the keys to get into the vaults. That just over thousands of years of magical radiation kind of turned into this horrible creature that they're gonna end up seeing. Like that's kind of what his origin is. But he's kind of also turned into like the Spider Lord, and so we're gonna give him like some monsters to kind of play around with. And I'm thinking what could be fun is, I think there's two things we can do. We can either give him a collection of giant spiders to command around, or even better, I think it would be kind of fun. It would be an interesting thing it would be an interesting thing if we just gave him like a whole bunch of swarm of insects, like swarms of spiders, and almost as like an action, he can like produce the spiders, and he just like sort of they like swarm out from his body as his like as his created and commanded minions or something. I think both could be really interesting. I think those could be really fun. You know, Shadow, I appreciate that. I appreciate that because that is 100%. Everything I do is mostly just me goofing around and having fun. So I'm glad to know that that's an appreciated mindset. Because boy, oh boy, because Lord knows I am not making significant income from this. That's what my day job is for. This is just for fun, just because I love doing it. And I hope to always maintain that sort of energy, so to speak. Lair action, yeah, exactly. Have it be like a lair action. Like, my thought is, like, you wouldn't even necessarily have to have it be a lair action. You could just have it be like once, because like I think it's a totally fair thing when you're doing a battle to have enemies that were nearby kind of show up and just enter the battle, right? And so I just kind of have this idea where it's like, if we're trying to get up to, you know, we can just make this, it won't be too difficult if we throw an extra 50 experience points of challenge there. That's pretty arbitrary, right? So we can do that. So we can give them 7 swarms of spiders. And so it's like for the first 7 rounds, once per round, a swarm of spiders just sort of like slough off of his body in this weird horror-driven nightmare fuel battle where he just sort of like sweats spiders and they come out and they just go in and they enter the battle, and they do that just to sort of add this chaos to everything. So that's kind of what my thought is. Yeah, absolutely. Watching the action economy, and that's why I say have them just act as separate enemies that sort of show up, and we just flavor it. They show up off of his body, so it's not actually him doing anything. Because if he's going to be the primary thing, you're right. I don't want to take away his action as doing that, because that would really make it too easy. You know, like it would make it really too easy, which is the whole concept of adding all these things. I mean, because the thing is, too, the reason that I don't the reason that I don't worry too much about adding enemies is because if I were to just have 7 swarms of spiders in there with this mini boss, then it would be not a big deal. They would just be a bunch of spiders that players could easily mush. And so since I'm even adding them one at a time, it's not that big of a deal. They can decide how they want to handle it. CR, I'm going for this. I always have a hard time conceptualizing what a challenge rating is supposed to be for a battle at large, which is why I set things up by experience points. So that way it's more about figuring it out. I mean, I guess if we were to equate this, it would be like, what? If we've got challenge rating 4 at 1100, so somewhere around challenge rating 5. This is meant to be a middling level difficulty challenge for 5 level 5 players. Is kind of what we're achieving with this one. 5 level 5 players. And so the way I do my dungeons is I guess it's more like chapters than it is dungeons. So this is like the level 5 chapter that we're working on, and this is the 3rd sort of like dungeon map component of it, of 5. I always do, like, there are 5 components or there are the number of components per chapter as the average player level is supposed to be. And I have this really long sort of mathematical system that I do for it. But essentially, Chapter 5 should take players from the beginning of level 5 all the way to level 6 is the idea. And so this being the third one, like I kind of step up the difficulty each time. So they can have that first chapter be a fun one for that to just feel like super powerful gods. Gives them the chance to just sort of play with their new abilities without worrying about dying immediately. You know, it gives them the chance to appreciate and enjoy the new level they just gained, the new experience, the new powers they've just gained, and they can have fun with that. And then we step up the difficulty, trying to keep enemies within the same theme, so that way it's like the difficulty steps up as they're also learning about the types of enemies they're facing, getting an idea on how to handle them, so that eventually when they get to like the boss of this chapter, I can throw a really difficult battle at them and they'll be prepared to handle it. So this one, I don't expect this to be too hard. I mean, we're talking about swarms of spiders. We're talking about, you know, challenge rating 1/2. These things have 22 hit points. They can just handle it. Like, they will be able to handle that no problem. Those things, like one action from one player will handle those things. It's really not going to be that difficult. And the Death Priest, I really don't think will be too much of a challenge for 5 level 5s either. I mean, this thing can do multi-attack with quarter staff, and it can do some spell casting, but with one turn, it's not going to be a problem for them. I really don't think this one's going to be a problem, and I'm okay with that, which is why I think we can kind of go nuts with whatever we want to do with the minions. But let's see, what do you got for me here? 1 CR5 is the same as 2 level 5 players. Okay, fair enough. Yeah, like I say, the challenge rating thing has always been kind of confusing to me. Doing it by experience points makes more sense to me, because that to me just sort of gives me an idea of, you know, what level, because the different challenge ratings have experience points, it just makes it easier for me to conceptualize it, because I know how many experience points players should get to go from level 5 up to level 6. Yeah, exactly. Challenge rating is confusing. It's definitely confusing. And the thing is too, is by going with experience points, I think it achieves the same thing. It just is a different way of looking at it, right? I think it just for me and the way my brain works, it just connects better. Because like I say, I know what experience points I need to provide 5 level 5 players to get them up to level 6. And so I know exactly how many experience points I should scatter around in this chapter to get them from there to, like, from step 1 to step 2. And I know if I break it up into 5 components, like, and this is just from experience having built dungeons and run dungeons this way. If I break that up into 5 components for level 5 players, then I know how much each component can roughly have to be an easy or a difficult challenge for them. So, and the other thing about it too is I don't worry too much about it, because if I realize that I've accidentally done everything like too insanely, you know, too difficult or too easy, I can just sort of modify it as we go and to give them the proper thing. Yeah, remembering to reward it, that can definitely be an issue. Yeah, that can definitely be a challenge. Which is why my thing about it too is, like, I use the experience points to math out what the combat should be, but when it comes to leveling up my players, I'll give them experience points, so if they're doing side missions and stuff like that, they might level up earlier and give themselves, you know, the opportunity to be extra powerful to handle something. But in general, I always have sort of in mind, if they get to the end of this chapter and they still haven't been at level 5, I will, as a landmark thing, say, hey, you guys should be at level 6. You've done enough to earn that level 6. And so, but I think what it comes down to, honestly, I think what it really comes down to is just being aware of your players and running a game, like, and being aware of what your players want and providing that experience for them. Not like experience as in like a you know, non-tangible concept, as opposed to experience points and stuff. Yes, I put a lot of work into it, and I've been doing it a lot. Like, I've been a DM for, gosh, it's over, like, I've been doing DM stuff for like at least 5 years, maybe longer. So I've practiced, and the thing is I've messed up a lot. I have goofed up a lot and learned how to sort of balance things, and learned kind of what players within a certain level can at least theoretically handle. And then I've also learned, like I say, to just sort of pay attention to my group and understand how do they play their characters, what resources do they end up having based on how their characters are built, and do I need to tweak things this way or that way to do it. And I think that's one of the most freeing things too, is recognizing that you really don't have to operate things super strict rules wise. You can tweak things, because ultimately it's about having fun. So if I throw this in there, like if I set up this battle and I'm going to do if I'm going to do 7 swarm of spiders, if I'm going to do that, and then those are just 100 experience points apiece. If I'm going to do that and we get partway through the battle and there's 3 of them there and they're struggling, I'll just lay off. I'll just stop it. I'll just call it there. Yeah, I can scroll up so you can see. So we're using our death priest right up here. It's a little cut off there. But yeah, like he can have multi-attack, so he can do 1 quarter staff attack and 1 spell, which is, so that's 2 actions per turn, while assuming we have 5 players, that's 5 per turn. So this guy is not going to be difficult for them. They might think he is, and he might go ahead and throw out one of these things and get a really good thing. Like he might throw out that vampiric touch and really mess with one of them early on, and that'll be intimidating to them. But this boss is not going to be too much for a group of 5. Not at all. Not at all. Yeah, exactly. The swarms would be a really interesting way to make this much more difficult, because this guy, as he is going to be really not that problematic as a separate thing. Yeah, exactly. He'll just have a lot of hit points, which will tap into, and that really is an important balance as well, because not only does this guy only have 2 attacks per turn, while players are going to have presumably at least 5. That's assuming that none of them have their own version of multi-attack or multiple attacks per turn, which at least one of them will by level 5. Within that, at least one of them will be able to do stuff like that. 65 hit points, that's nothing. They'll take this guy out in a round unless we do stuff. So I'm thinking if we throw in those spiders, if we start off with a swarm of spiders messing up with 1 or 2 of the characters who are like gonna enter this chamber probably pretty bunched up, that'll immediately make things difficult. The other thing I'm planning to do with this guy is, like, I have my little notes here of how I'll run this guy when the time comes for the battle. He's going to use that spider climb to absolutely its maximum effect. He will do everything he can to stay away. Yeah, exactly. All martial characters having those multiple attacks. Yeah, exactly. So he will 100% be at spider climb to try and take that away from them too. And that's an important part of running a boss like this, is making sure that you run that boss intelligently. So hey, thanks for the follow. I appreciate that. I really appreciate that. And hey, you're the first person to do the follow with my new alert banners that I'm trying out. So you're the first person to see all the pretty blue stuff that I have going on now. But no, I appreciate that. I'm glad you're enjoying the stream. But yeah, I think this guy is an interesting boss in that if he's played stupidly and if there's no help for him, he's not a boss at all. He's just a minor annoyance for 5 players. I mean, you could practically throw in like level 1 or 2 players. With 5 of them, they'll probably be able to handle this guy without too much difficulty. I mean, level 1 might be a little much, but you know what I mean. Whereas if we give him minions, suddenly this guy becomes a rather intimidating thing. So that's why I kind of want to err on the side of giving him more guys so that he can get more. There will be more opportunities for him to get those temp hit points and stuff. Yeah, absolutely. He'll be kind of smart. And I mean, the thing for me is, even if like that's the beauty of homebrew. Even if the guy wasn't rules as written smart, this is a homebrew world. We can do whatever the hell we want. And so because we're making him a boss, I'll always play him intelligently. I don't like making players face only stupid bosses, because it really takes away from that intimidation factor of bosses. I like making characters or enemies that are willing to run away, that are willing to be clever about things. I think it makes battles much more interesting. I think that's one of the pitfalls of that a lot of, especially, like, I know it's a pitfall that I ran into a lot in my earlier days of DMing. I think a lot of early DM, like a lot of new DMs kind of run into this pitfall. They get too caught up, they're too worried about being too hard on their players, so they play enemies pretty stupidly. And so then without even worrying about the challenge of it, they just become boring, because every enemy becomes a sword swinging damage sponge that just stands there and gets hit until they die. And it makes every battle feel the same, and I feel like that's the number one reason why people will sometimes get bored of battles, is because they just all feel the same before long. Which is why I like to go into a battle having, you see, I've done it with every enemy, even just these little mini things. I go through, I take the time to write out notes of what I should be doing in terms of tactics for that enemy. So that way we have an idea of how we can make this not just like, oh, it's just another easy to kill enemy, I guess I'll just swing my sword a few times. It's like, give them some sort of unique thing that sets them apart from the other enemies, at least within this dungeon, right? So these guys are going to try and cover one target and focus on it, right? The swarm of insects. And my idea is that a lot of times, and in fact I'm even going to put a note there, I usually do this a lot, but I'm going to say here, multiple swarms will act as one big one. So the idea is that, you know, and that'll make a lot of sense for if we're going to have them all coming from this guy and have him sort of be like the one in control of these guys. All of these swarms will act as one big grouping swarm, so it's going to force the players to have to think about separating. Otherwise, they're all going to be just in the middle of this swarm, and that could be good to separate, but the flip side is then they might end up in a situation where one guy is getting hit with like 5 swarms of spiders, and that can whittle you down pretty quick. So it's going to create some interesting unique challenges for players to have to think about in here, even though it's just a couple swarms of spiders. So I don't know, that's you know, thanks for coming to my TED Talk, I guess, but I feel like there's a lot more potential in combat than what a lot of DMs think about. And like I say, I think it's because of the pitfall, and again, this is one that I've fallen into myself quite frequently in the past. It's the tendency to be afraid to really hit your players, right? There's that sort of fear. You don't want to upset your players, and so you don't want to accidentally make them unconscious or kill them or anything like that. You have to let that go for, well, really for 2 reasons. One of them, because even if someone dies, it's like, okay, well then just like right into the campaign that now they got to go to, you know, the underworld and rescue their player. Like, why not? It's homebrew. You can do whatever the hell you want. Or maybe that player's excited to play a new character. Who knows? You know, dying does not mean the end of the game for multiple reasons. But the other reason is because, like I say, despite the fact that if you have an enemy come out the gate real hard using their best stuff, there'll be that intimidation factor, and it'll be tempting for someone to be like, holy crap, this thing just did 20 damage, I'm terrified of it. But if he does that, like if he does 20 damage with his best attack early on, and then the rest of it he's only doing 10 damage apiece, and you have 5 people that can take turns taking the brunt and healing each other, they can handle that no problem. They can handle way more than they think they can, and I always think that's hilarious with my players. They will, at level 10, go up against 3 boars, and one of the boars will get a hit and gore one of them. They'll be like, oh my gosh, this thing is like super mega boar, and they're terrified. And then half a round later, only 2 of them got to actually do anything because they murdered the crap out of these things, right? It's like there's that intimidation factor, and players will always be more terrified than they need to be, or at least the players I've played with will be in that situation. And so as a DM, you have to not be sucked into that too. You have to be willing to say, no, they can handle more than they think they can. I'm going to throw at them an actual challenge that will actually be a challenge for them. So yeah, absolutely. And that's the funny thing too. Like, I think that I think that oftentimes I'm a brutal DM, but even still, with me not really pulling punches, my players in my current campaign, like, they've been knocked unconscious, like collective. This is talking about among all players throughout the whole campaign. They've been knocked unconscious like 4 times maybe. You know, they've been close and they've been in troublesome situations, but I've never given them something they couldn't handle. You know, and like, but even then, that's with me thinking that I'm not pulling any punches, which means that I could be even harder on them than I think, and that therein lies the risk of that pitfall there. So 2 deaths among 3 players. Yeah, so you're definitely much more brutal. But I think a lot of that too depends on the kind of game you want to run. And I think there's a lot of validity to both, right? There's the more story-driven ones in which players are really not wanting their characters to die because they're really doing a lot of character growth and everything, and they want that big long arc, which is what my group is more interested in. So I do tend to like keep things a bit more tame for them, so that way they can have that growth, and that's the story. But I also think there's a lot of room, and I actually enjoy playing in them sometimes, the more Dark Souls approach to the game, where it's just you're absolutely wailing on them, you know, and you're likely to die a lot, you know, so you're gonna have to accept that and deal with it, right? There's just so many different ways to play it, and I think that's why the game is so amazing, why tabletop RPGs in general are so awesome, and why I love them, because you can just really tailor make and have these unique experiences that just, you know, you can't get if you're trying to stick with one formula like a video game would, right? Like a video game, you play Skyrim and there's no variation. It's like, it's Skyrim and it's great, but it's not, you can't have all of those unique experiences like you can in tabletops. So yeah, absolutely, giving players the way to come back and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I do that stuff a lot. One mechanism that I'll use too to have consequences without necessarily having to brutalize and kill them is I'll introduce, I've done before, a sort of homebrew mechanic of like permanent injuries, permanent grievous injuries, losing a limb, right? Losing an eye, losing a sense, or something like that. Like doing some sort of thing. So if you die, like you can be resurrected, right? Resurrected, or just like have it so that there is no actual death. You're just like mortally wounded, and so your players have to stabilize you, and then you're unconscious until you can get back to a city, so you're like dead effectively. But then when you come back, you know, it's like you lost a foot, and so now you have to figure out how to succeed and overcome this thing, right? So there's still a consequence without having to lose your character. So, you know, that just kind of lends into why it's okay to be hard on your players as a DM, because just because you're harsh on them and someone may die throughout the course of a campaign doesn't mean the game is over. Not even for that character, let alone that player. So, yeah, no, I'm totally with you that you really can be hard, and that's why, like I say, for this guy, I want to give him those 7 swarms of spiders so we can really take advantage of that feed on death thing, so that he can get those D10 temporary hit points, and hopefully get them a lot is the idea. So it's like every time they kill those spiders, he gets stronger, and so they have to start thinking like, okay, do we take all of those attacks from the spiders, like even if they're just the bites and they're only doing, you know, 44 damage, like do they sit there and do they eat that, or do they give him health so that they're not taking extra damage, you know? And that's the challenge. That's the challenge there. So no, I think this will be a good, interesting boss battle. And the thing about it is too, I mean, we're talking about level 5 is what we're balancing this for. Even that is not going to be too difficult, but that's fine, because we still have 2 stages left in this chapter that are going to get both of them much more difficult. So, oh, thank you, I appreciate that. My players seem to like the games I provide, and that's really all that matters to me. I just like making sure my friends have a good time. So I appreciate that. I really do appreciate that. It's nice to know that I'm not like completely, you know, blowing hot air out my ass when I'm talking about the stuff that I do. I appreciate that. But yeah, let's go ahead and flesh this battle out a little bit here. So I always like to, the way I always do these things, so I am first going to put a DM note in here, and I always put my DM notes in red just so that way I can see those, and I have that visual cue that's basically like, hey idiot, don't read this out loud, so I don't give things away. And what I want to do for this guy is I want him to be hiding in the shadows, and he's gonna climb out when the players sort of intrude upon his space. So we're just gonna say the boss is hiding in the shadows. I'm going to say DC 14 to notice that there is anything alive in here. But there's anything alive in here, but they won't be able to discern what until he reveals himself. So I really want that. It's really for an atmospheric thing. I just want to be able to set a cool picture, like just kind of paint a picture for my players. So like if they have really good investigation checks, you know, and DC 14 isn't too unattainable at all for level 5, so that's perfectly manageable. You know, so it's like, but the idea is like if they do that, they'll notice that like one of the walls is moving, and that's like all of the spiders or something like that. So don't be afraid to brag, man. You clearly don't know me too intimately, because bragging is one thing that I have a lot of difficulty doing. But I appreciate the vote of confidence. I do really appreciate that. And, you know, it takes good people telling me that I need to brag to give me the self-esteem to eventually do it one day. So no, I appreciate it. It means a lot to me. So let's see. They won't be able to discern what he is until he reveals himself. Instead, if successful on the investigation, they see the movement and aren't subject to a surprise attack. So the thing will try and get its surprise attack, but sorry, Sloth. Yeah, that's a heck of a time to come in. We're doing our mini boss, which is like our Spider Lord guy, our crawl death whatever, his death priest that really isn't a spider guy, but he looks close enough that if players look up a picture that I can sell it as being like a Spider Lord kind of guy, and he's got good stats that work for it. So, you know, it's homebrew. We play fast and loose with stuff, right? We're just trying to set a scene and make it an interesting environment. But yeah, so he's gonna try and lure them in and try and get a surprise attack. Ravna-based campaign, not in its entirety, but there's definitely some parallels in this part of it. I mean, they're in an underground, abandoned dwarven tunnel, so. Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, second health bar. Absolutely. No, I feel like second health bar for this guy, it should be like, he should tear away and it should be 3 giant spiders in a trench coat type of situation. And that's what it is. No, I try to avoid that for my players just because, like, I know that, like, oh, hi, kitty. You might see a cattail in a minute here. She's gonna come. Yep, there she goes. Say hi. She can't leave her little bed that's right over there. She can't leave it without making sure she gets her attention out of it. But no, I try to avoid doing too many second health bar things because, one, I don't want it to become an eye-rolling trope in my games, right? Because like it certainly is a good way to add extra challenge and stuff like that. But I don't want to overuse it because that's a real good way to have it be like, oh yeah, he's not actually dead yet, right? And so it's like if you're really limited in how you do it, it can actually be like a surprising thing that catches them off guard. And the other reason about it too is because battles usually go on long enough without doing that. So, and like especially with my groups as they're structured right now, the games that I play, because I'm part of 2 campaigns right now. I'm a player in one of them, and I'm a DM in the other one. And both of them are once per week online, and we only play for about 2 hours in the evenings. So it would take forever. And there's nothing wrong with doing a multi-session battle, and I have done that before as well. But I really like having things be able to like have a good bookmark in them, right? A good like end of chapter bookmark that I can do. But yeah, no, I'm with you. On major bosses, it can be fun, and if you save it for the major bosses, it keeps it fresh. Right, it keeps it interesting and fresh. So I'm with you. Although now that I'm thinking about it, I do like the idea of 3 giant spiders in a trench coat. Just like going for that. That's a real slapstick Three Stooges approach to things, and I feel like that could be a fun way to add levity if there's a particularly dark and twisted chapter. And I definitely do that in my campaigns. I'm not too afraid of exploring some really dark dark themes. So that would be a really fun way to just like, no, add that bit of, like I say, a bit of levity to the situation. So, Battle Vor, oof, yeah, that's a different stream. You guys gotta pay me. You guys gotta donate a lot more to me if you want that to happen. I gotta get a lot more money if we're gonna take that route. Oh boy. But yeah, so the guy's gonna hide in there, and he'll jump out and he'll try to get that surprise attack. And regardless, I think we can sort of add a certain description in here. That'll work, and I'll just remember that, and I can modify. I don't even usually read. I always kind of put in a narrative description of things. I usually don't read it, but I like putting that in there as a reminder to myself, because I'm writing this campaign right now, and I am not running it. I don't want to run the campaign that I'm streaming, because I don't want players to go in, because I like my players to be able to come and watch my stuff if they're interested. I've got one player who's been really fascinated with the concept of world building and is trying to get involved in it, and so he'll come and watch my streams to sort of get ideas about his own project, and I don't want to accidentally give him spoilers for their campaign. So the point is, I might not run this campaign for a while, so I like putting these descriptions in there, one, as a reminder to myself, and two, so that way if I'm running a game and it's late at night or at the end of a session and I'm really tired and my brain is not being creative and coming up with descriptive descriptions on the fly, that way I can just read it and still have something and have it be like, yeah, it's fine, even though my brain is short-circuiting, like, it's fine. But yeah, so we'll just add a little description here, just a little bit of, alien isolation stuff in here. You enter a very dark chamber. The walls echo with the near silent hums and drips of the cave around you. But somehow, we'll give them a little tip-off. We'll give them a little suspense. But somehow, you still don't feel alone. And we'll just kind of like offer that up there. And then I'm just going to put in a little DM note here again. So after this part, pause and let them sweat for a moment. Just kind of give that there. Yeah, give them the chance to kind of be a little freaked out about what's going on here. Then we'll say, suddenly, the wall starts to move, and the wall starts to move, and the chamber comes to life. A large black mass materializes. Oh boy, I don't want to go through and figure out how I misspelled that. There we go. Large black mass materializes and approaches you with startling speed. It is only when the creature is nearly upon you that you see a horrific monster that appears as a colossal. That sounds more frightening than giant. We'll say colossal spider with a dwarven head. Boom, there we go. So there's our description, and suddenly there's our death priest. I do want to put in, I'm going to put a note right actually, I'm going to put the note right here, because that'll stand out to me and I'll see it, so when I'm setting it up I'll remember. These enter one per round over the course of the fight, as though, and I'm going to use the word sloughing just to make it that extra uncomfortable, because this should not be a comfortable situation. Everyone should be very upset about the situation, because even if they're confident in their fighting abilities, it is not a pretty sight. So these enter 1 per round over the course of the fight, as though sloughing off the death priest himself. And we'll just put that little note there so we remember that that's the structure we want to have for that. And I think that is sufficiently creepy. I know if I were on the player side of that, I would be very, very upset about the situation unfolding. And yeah, I think it'll be good. I think it'll be really good. Okay, so now for the reward here. So whenever there's a dungeon that I'm doing, I always kind of break it down. It's a little formulaic, but it works, and it sort of, for me, helps me remember to make sure I've got fun, interesting things in there for players. But every room, there's usually about 10 rooms per portion, just because that's a good way to break things up. And then within each room, there's always some sort of danger or challenge and some sort of reward for players. And in this room, we've got it's not exactly a monetary reward, but it kind of ends up being it, but it's also a lore-based reward. A lot of the rewards I'll do as lore, which are ways to like give non-essential but still helpful information to players. So it's like the reward is that they sort of have an easier time understanding what to do in maybe some future rooms that are still coming up, is what I like to do. So for this one, though, the Death Priest was formerly a dwarf who was one of the guardians of these vaults, and so he was entrusted with one of the keys to the vaults. You need 2 keys to the vaults to get into them, and so our players, as they're traveling to the vaults, will have to pay attention. Otherwise, they'll have to go back to the vault, or go back through the pathway to find these keys and get their way in. Well, this guy has one of those keys that's just been around his neck for ages, and like we kind of added a description right here. Was once one of the keepers of the keys, but became trapped when trying to return from locking down the vaults at the beginning of the unhinging. Has been corrupted and disfigured slowly over the years since the unhinging began. Now has no remaining sanity that is accessible in the former dwarven mind. The key is around its neck, and it guards it ferociously, though doesn't really remember why. So it doesn't know why it's supposed to, but it has that sort of protective instinct. And so they're going to have to get this key from him if they want to get access there. And so that's one of the rewards. Yeah, reward being more like I say, like, you know, like you're saying, foreshadowing, and just basically being interesting stuff that will come up later in the dungeon as well. It makes things feel bigger for players, you know. If like suddenly something they learned, you know, a dungeon and a half ago comes up, you know, later on, it makes it feel like they're part of something that's bigger, right? Something more, something deeper that's happening around them. And I think that makes it a lot more fun for players that way. Yeah, having the key, I thought about that. I actually had thought about it, like having been incorporated into his like spidery exoskeleton carapace. I had thought about that, and like they would have to like carve it out. The reason that I'm not doing that is I'm worried that would make it too subtle for them to think that they have to obtain the key that way. Like I would be worried that I would just end up having to explicitly tell them, like, no, that's an actual key that's been absorbed into him, rather than it being like a hint that, oh, if we find out where this guy was before, we'll find the key. And while I'm not opposed to kind of leaving things a little ambiguous, the one thing that I've always learned, the one thing I've not always learned, the one thing that I have learned is that just because a solution feels obvious to me, if it's obvious to me, yeah, you're right. Like, I mean, there'll eventually be that click point, probably. There will be, or at least there can be, but I try to not make those assumptions and take that concept for granted, because the thing I've learned is that just because it's obvious to me doesn't mean it'll be obvious to players, because I'm writing the clue with the answer already in mind. So I know exactly how that clue relates to the answer, but if you don't know the answer, it can be really hard to recognize those clues. The analogy I use all the time is I can write the answer in Sharpie on their forehead, but they can't see their own forehead, and even if they look in a mirror, it'll be backwards, right? And so it's like, it just kind of for me, that analogy sort of offers up the image of like, just because it's obvious to me does not mean it's obvious to players. So I'm always trying to be careful about that. And so that's why I'm going to opt for there's a key around his neck, but I'm not going to tell them what that key is for. So that way they're going to find this key, and they might try it on other locks that they see, or they might even go back and try it on other locks they found, and it won't become obvious that that is the answer until they get to where they need to use that key, is sort of the angle that I'm going with instead. So it's like they're going to see an obvious key and probably want to take it, but at the same time, there's no obvious reason for them to take that key yet. There are some assumptions that they might be able to make. Oh, we're going to vaults that are locked. Maybe this key is relevant. So I'm kind of going for that route of mystery. But yeah, it's a tricky one because I think you're right. I think there's plenty of information there for them to get it, but there's a lot of ways for them to miss that clue. And I always feel kind of bummed out, not for my sake, but for their sake, if I have to take away that aha moment by just giving them the answer because it's taken them too long and they're stuck. You know, it's like if you're trying to, solve a puzzle in a video game, you just can't get it. So then you go find a guide, and the guide gives the answer. You're like, oh, okay. It kind of takes away that, like, oh, I did it. And I do everything I can to avoid that if I can. But I think it's a tricky one, and I think it's really just up to, it's really a judgment call. I don't think there's a right or wrong, because I think what you're saying there is like a perfectly cool, awesome thing. But yeah, I don't know. And it might also have to do with descriptive style too. Like someone who describes things differently than the way I usually do might have an easier time conveying that and making it work. So someone who's a different DM than me might have better success and really want to opt for that approach. So yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting thing to think about, I would say, for sure. So I'm just gonna put a quick note about the lore here. And so we're gonna say with the horrific creature slain and lying on the ground before you, you have an easier time examining it. In doing so, you can see. Oops, nope. You can see that only Dan can see. You, Dan, see. No, in doing so, you can see that around this creature's neck is an aged leather necklace with a key attached to it. Do a key attached to it. I almost wanna. I wish I could give. I want to try and give a description. Oh, here we go. I know what we can do. I know what we can do. We'll say I'm gonna put a little DM note right here about this guy as well. I'm gonna do just a DM note and say, during battle, have it occasionally clutch at or specially protect the key around its neck. Just offer up that subtle bit of that subtle bit of description that says that can maybe cue to the more perceptive players, like, hey, this thing is like really concerned about that key around its neck. And then we can just sort of offer up one more thing. The key, though tarnished and ancient, is jewel encrusted, giving it a strong air of importance. Strong air of importance. Oh, here we go. Here's a fun little description we can add to it. Some areas of its surface remain polished as though the creature made a habit of clutching and caressing it. Let's see, we'll say apparently it was once a very important item to the monster. And then we can just sort of add those little bits there, and those are like really subtle hints, really subtle clues, but they're non-essential. And I think they can, like I say, to the more poetic and attentive players, that can really make it seem like there's a lot of that can really kind of convey that extra importance to this item. And I think that sort of will give them the clue like, oi, you better take this, as well as just kind of giving them that sense of like, hey, we learned something from handling this. We've definitely made some kind of progress here today. I'm looking at my camera to see if my lighting is changing a lot. My cat, so I've got a window right here. It's a full-length window. My desk is right by the stationary part of a sliding glass door, right? So it's like, it's not in the way of the door, but I get a lot of that stuff there. But I keep the blinds there so I don't get too much glare. While my cat is down below, batting the, she's batting the blinds to the side so she can see how some of the things are moving back and forth and getting a lot of different light shining. So hopefully it's not messing with my camera too much. It doesn't seem to be. So I don't know. Anyway, ooh shiny. All right, with these descriptions done, I'm gonna just take like a quick 3-minute break. I need to use the bathroom and I need to refresh my beverage here. So I'm gonna go take care of that stuff. I will be back very shortly. If you guys want to sit tight, I'm gonna try experimenting again with my new overlays. The free package that I got only has so many, so we're just gonna go over to here, and you guys are gonna stare at my just like face one, but I want to use them, right? I just got him there, so I want to use him. So I'm gonna set this stuff here, and I'm gonna run to the bathroom real quick. I will be back very shortly. You'll probably see me going back and forth behind here as I get myself something to drink as well. But yeah, I'll be here very, very shortly. So sit tight.
Y'all think, but I think that's pretty.
Alrighty, there we go. Thank you for your patience. Hold on, I gotta do one more thing. I gotta get my electric blanket back on my lap here. So I have gone through a bit of a weight loss journey in the past year. I used to be pretty athletic and involved in Muay Thai kickboxing in college. And then after college, I went to grad school and worked on a career, and then COVID kept me home for a little while, so I kind of got a little fat over the course of the few years where that was all going on. but I have since gotten back into kickboxing, and so over the course of a year, lost about 50 pounds. And now that it's the middle of winter, I can tell you that going through winter 50 pounds lighter than you're used to is a very cold experience. Imagine having a 50-pound blanket that someone takes away from you as it starts getting below freezing. I am cold all the time. It has been a hard adjustment. It has been a very hard adjustment for me. So I have multiple electric blankets, and because I'm also like not rich, so I can't just crank up the heat like I wish I could. So I have employed electric blankets, so that way I can, you know, get the minimal increase of only having to heat a few wires in a blanket as opposed to an entire apartment more. But I'm a cold person all the time. My cat loves it. She loves it. She loves snuggling up on the electric blankets with me. It's her favorite. She'll climb like under the bed covers with me at night so she can enjoy the heat. And I'm always worried I'm gonna roll over and smush her, but you know, she's a goofball and she likes it. So here we are. Anyway, thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Alrighty, let's see here. Alright, so we've got our description of our of this room going on. Now let's go ahead and just put a few map details in here. Putting the details, the little touches on the maps for this section are pretty easy to handle, honestly, because I mean it's just pretty much all an empty cave with like a few things in it rather than decorated houses and stuff. But there's one thing that I want to do. Actually, I was thinking about this one. I want to change. I'm gonna get rid of these and I'm gonna redo these lights. I'm always very liberal about throwing in extra lights and torches. I know it doesn't really make lore sense considering this is supposed to be tunnels that have been abandoned for thousands of years. It should be pitch black. But I play my games I play online, and even if there were a game that I wasn't playing online, I would still prepare as if I were, so that way I always have that option, because I find it takes a lot more work and tools to prep for an online session, because I have to like somehow make a map digitally, unlike in person where I just have I've got a whiteboard with a grid mark on it, and so I can just draw whatever the map is and I can just do that in a few seconds, whereas for this I like actually making nice maps. We use virtual tabletop, but the thing is like there can be a lot of complications about having our actual lighting operate properly on those things. Sometimes it's software issues. Sometimes it's someone has an old computer that just can't handle it, so we try to minimize certain things, or like certain effects and stuff like that. And so the point is, I always try to add in some lights into these rooms, for the sake of making sure that everyone can see. Because the other thing is I've never had players enter a dark chamber and just accept that it's dark. They always will make sure that somehow, in some way, they have like a torch or something. So I always just add the light so they can see whatever they need to see and call it good. And it's just easier that way. It's a personal style choice. Might not be the best. It might not be something that everyone chooses to do. You know, and I certainly, and the thing is too, is like as a DM, I would actually prefer to not do this and to make them have to like realistically find a torch and like attach that to their characters and stuff like that. But it just ends up being clunky, and most of the time players aren't super big fans of it. So, you know, to keep the peace, I usually just add in, you know, whatever lights and torches and stuff we need. Let's see here, do not snap this. We want to this. So I'll always add the lights, and what I'll do is instead, to help mitigate it, I'll just make the lights smaller and I'll make them a bit more distant, so that way at least the rooms still feel kind of dark. And that's the beauty of using the blue colored light as well. It kind of still adds that cave feel to things. But it's like if we separate these here, it's not going to be exceptionally bright. There's still like some darkness in there, and that blue just does give it that like cold, dark underground feel, which is enough to get the point across. Alrighty, we got that, and honestly, for this room, because it's just an empty chamber with an enemy in there, we don't need to add anything else. Because we make sure to add the enemies once we get into the virtual tabletop rather than the map maker, because otherwise the enemies will just be permanent fixtures on the map, and that's not good. So that's all we really need to do for that one. Just save so that way I don't lose all my crap if something goes to hell in a handbasket, which it always seems to at the worst possible times. That's what computers do to us. It's great. But yeah, all right. So there's that room done, taken care of. I love it. Love it. Excellent. Super cool. Super neat. Super duper, guys. All right. So the rest of the rooms will be a little bit more basic, but that's fine. We kind of it's honestly kind of for the best to have most of the rooms be like mundane, not boring, but just like kind of similar and unremarkable compared to a lot of the other rooms, or compared to the more important rooms. Like it's good to do that, so that way things like the boss battle really stand out. You know, it's kind of good to have a lot of easy battles where it's just, you know, like, oh, it's just different combinations of spiders and stuff, and then suddenly you have one boss and it's gonna be like, oh, that boss though, that thing, I remember that. And that's how you can really help players sort of have those memorable moments. It sounds weird to do it that way, because you would think that you should focus on just trying to have the memorable thing be memorable, but you can't have something be memorable if everything else around it is also there. So if you kind of tone it down for some of the other rooms, then it helps keep those really spectacular moments special. Okay, so an easy battle is only going to be worth 600 experience points. These are really just things like, honestly, these easy battles, especially at this stage in this chapter of the campaign, are not meant to be anything other than doling out some experience points, and also, depending on how realistic you want to get with your players, and I lean towards the realism here, have neighboring enemies that, if players are making a loud ruckus handling enemies in one chamber or something like that, can have enemies that will, you know, a minute or two later enter that same room as sort of like an added challenge, you know, because they're investigating all the noise. So that way you can kind of have that tiered battle effect, you know, where it's like if they don't use the minute immediate, if they don't use their like first activity immediately after battle to heal each other up, they're still in trouble, you know, and they haven't finished, you know, investigating everything. It can kind of add some interesting dynamic stuff if you have just widespread easier battles, I've always found. So these are going to be just worth 600 experience points. Honestly, just kind of want to go ahead and throw in 3 giant spiders. Just, yeah, there's 3 giant spiders chilling out here. And we'll probably make the room full of spider webs because, you know, creepy. But yeah, let's 3x giant spitter, and those are worth 200 experience points a pop. I'm gonna just do that. And then the reward is a map. And this is kind of a homebrew rule I've added for the sake of my players, because one thing that is also very frustrating for my players, and probably a lot of players beyond just mine, is like when they enter these things with the virtual tabletop, they're gonna enter down here. This is the entrance. They're gonna enter down here, and they're going to see like this room, and everything else is gonna be pure black. And so for players, like, again, this is something that I actually kind of like as a DM. I like that if they're in a place they've never been in before, they don't know what the layout is and all that kind of stuff. But something that's frustrated players a lot is the fact that they can't. I will give them benefit of the doubt, right, because of the way line of sight works and stuff like that, and like the view distance is set in these games. It does make it hard for them to know, like, if they're standing here, it does make it really hard for them to know, like, oh, is this a long hallway, or is this opening just leading to another room? And that's something that you probably could get a sense for in real life. So again, as sort of a compromise, I offered up the potentiality for, if they explore rooms and they find it, they can get a map, in which case I will then, like, drag them around, drag their tokens all the way through so they can get an understanding of the layout of the dungeon, you know, at large. So that way it's like, okay, you guys still have to kind of go through and deal with some of this, but I'm willing to give you a way to not have to do it exclusively all the time, especially in really dark places like caves and stuff. So So the reward will be a map, and we'll kind of come up with an excuse for there to be just a map lying there. It's usually pretty easy, especially in tunnels like that. It's just like, yeah, it was a little map that one of the dwarves used to make sure they didn't get lost in there. I don't know. That's all there's to it. They would have made a map of these things. They would have had them on hand. Back in the good old days of the doors not being, you know, run from their city because of the unhinging. As far as the easy battle goes here, we'll just say I am going to put a little note here. Probably no luck sneaking in, as the 3 spiders are scattered around throughout the chamber, because a lot of times people will get in the habit of always trying to stealth in there, and like it doesn't always make sense for that to be happening. So, hey, how's it going? GR Monarchy. Ah, there we go. 520. Welcome. Glad to see you here. Hopefully you are having a good day. I didn't mean to like break up your name and say it so awkwardly, but I sometimes have to phonetically pronounce things, especially usernames, because they're just like a big old jumble of stuff. Especially when, so on my screen, your name is completely red, and I'm red-green colorblind, so reds are particularly fuzzy and difficult for me to work with. But regardless of my ineptitude, welcome. Glad to see you here. So let's see here. Probably no luck sneaking in, as the 3 spiders are scattered around throughout the chamber. You know, just sometimes it just doesn't make sense for them to get a good stealth. I don't care how good you are as a sneaky rogue. Sometimes you just can't sneak up on someone. Sometimes someone is just a little too aware of their surroundings. Deal with it. So then we can just kind of add a little bit of descriptive nature here. And we'll just add something like cobwebs line the ceiling, walls, and floor of this chamber within the tunnels. It is not difficult to make out the 3 lumps scattered throughout the webbing that are clearly giant spiders that live in this chamber. It is also not difficult to notice them moving towards you as you disturb the silence of the chamber. So there we go. You can do that. You know what? I'm doing good. I'm doing good today. It is a rare sunny day, my neck of the woods here in the middle of winter, and it's a Friday, which means that, you know, my day job, everything is nice and chill. Things always kind of die down on the weekends for me, as people kind of make sure to finish up their projects early, so that way they don't have stuff waiting for them on Monday when we get back from the weekend. So it's a quiet day at my day job. Get to go and do some extra training, some extra kickboxing training tonight. Tonight's just like a bag workout night, so I just get to go there and work on only the stuff I want to work on. Gonna do some rock climbing. It's a pretty good day for me. It's a pretty good day for me. Thank you for asking. Hopefully the same can be said for, honestly, everyone across the world. I know that's not true, but we can still hope for it. That sounded a little more trite than I meant it to be. Like, I genuinely hope that the majority of people on Earth are having a good day. Seems kind of dickish to not wish for that. But, I don't know, it's just like, it's such an impossibility that no matter how you say that, it sounds flippant and dismissive. and that's too bad. That's too bad. Oh, boy. Anywho, all right. So there's just that's it. It's a battle. There's 3 spiders. It's not that big of a deal here. Not everything has to be anything particularly extreme. So as far as the map goes, we'll say, okay, here's what we'll say for this one. Here's what we can do. Throughout the chamber around you are many skeletons stuck to the webbing. Stuck to the webbing that lines every surface. Let's see here. But beautiful. Oh, that blue. I can see that one. Excellent. You're very considerate. It's like I can still see red and green, but first off, like, so it's an interesting thing. Bright reds, especially like digital bright reds, tend to get kind of like, I don't know how to describe it. Fuzzy isn't exactly the right word. It's like I can very distinctly see it, but my eyes have a hard time like having a crystal clear vision. It's almost like the type of effect if you have like a double image on your screen is almost how like reds look for me. So I kind of always have to squint and look at them. What's more prominent, the bigger issue with reds and greens for me is that they, like, greens will tend to look very gray or brown to me. So like a lot of times I'll see like an olive green will just look flat out brown, you know, or how I first discovered I was colorblind, or at least mildly so, was I had a sweatshirt that was like one of my favorite hoodies ever. I loved it. And I thought it was, and like for the longest time I would call it my favorite gray my favorite gray sweater, or favorite gray hoodie, either way. And then one day my friends were like, Scott, why are you calling it that? I'm like, what? It's my favorite sweater and it's gray. And they're like, no, that thing is green. And I looked down and I thought for the longest time the thing was this dark gray color. Turns out it was a really deep forest green. And it makes me shudder to imagine the amount of times I clashed because I thought it was gray instead of green. But that's kind of how I first figured it out, and then suddenly I understood why also I have a hard time separating like purple and navy blue, because they look kind of the same to me, because I have a really hard time picking out the red hues within purples. So like a navy blue and a purple will largely look the same to me. And when I was in veterinary school back in the day, back when I was still part of that world, I had this set of purple scrubs that I bought because I thought they were navy blue. And so everyone was like, oh, I like it. I really like your purple scrubs. I was like, huh? What are you talking about? So, I don't know. It's an interesting thing. And of course, like when word first started going around to friends and family that I'm actually like colorblind, when it like first came up to people, of course, naturally, everyone's response is, oh, what color is that tree? I'm like, well, clearly I know it's green because it's a tree. Everyone knows trees are green. Like, I'm colorblind. I'm not stupid. But anyway, thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Throughout the chamber around you are many skeletons stuck to the webbing that lines every surface. Some have pouches nearby with various goodies. Goodies? No, goodies. That's what I'm looking for. With various goodies tucked away. And we'll go ahead and just offer up, let's do, I don't know, I don't want this to be a particularly treasure-heavy one, so we'll say among all of it they find 57 gold pieces in total, a tarnished silver locket, and then a map, let's say, by a well, they're all gonna be dwarven. They're in the old dwarven tunnels. A map of this portion of the tunnels. There we go. It's a little game mechanic to have it just be like this part of the tunnels rather than the tunnels at large, but we are playing a game, so it's okay for it to be a little game mechanic. It's like, no, if you want to find the tunnels to the next thing, you gotta find that map. But if you want the map to these tunnels, then there you go. You found it. You did it. Congrats. Hooray, you did it. Congratulations. Congratulations. Does anyone else remember that one? Am I the only one who thought that one was hilarious? I never really knew how big that meme got. Well, the meme of the, like, what was stock footage of a guy saying congratulations, like, the idea is to, like, you would purchase it, and then, like, you could just, like, clip it in there for, like, your office training or whatever. Like, if someone passes a little mini quiz in the middle of it, and you just, like, you would just take one section of it of him going, congratulations. But it's like a 3-minute video of just this one guy doing various like congratulations, congratulations, and it always cracked me up. I always loved that. It's probably the only person who thought it was hilarious. I'm an easy man to please sometimes, but hey, you know, that makes it easy to enjoy life, right? Let's see here. Trying to find people that allow you to be in charge of loot in their campaign. So, like, what do you mean? Like you as the player be the treasurer for a group, or I probably should just stand up so it doesn't go over my head, but so like, okay, so like you're just wanting to be the treasurer of a group. Okay, I gotcha. And then we'll put one right there. And then we'll give our little blue lights because it's a cave and we want to keep it atmospheric. Make sure they don't get too big, yo. That right there. That right there. I'm assuming you're still typing the rest of the question. I'm not trying to be dismissive, but I'm waiting for the rest of the question. I realized that I just kind of like randomly went silent after reading that. After you said you had a question. I will answer, but I need to see a question mark. Oh boy. Although I guess I don't need to be like that because I finally have a little chat scrolling thing, so it doesn't sound weird on the VOD when I just like dismissively stop responding to someone. It's like, no, I'm waiting, and now people can actually see it. It's over there. Wait, hold on. It's over here. Right, there it is. There it is. I'm not used to having these overlays yet. This is the first time I've tried it, and I mean, I like it so far. I think it's kind of neat. Let's see here. Okay, we need to now this one we got to put a lot of spider webs here. They have just like a group of webs. Well, let's just search for web. There we go. Lots of spider webs and stuff. That's what I want to throw in here. We just want to line this place with all kinds of spider. In fact, I'm going to use the scatter tool for it instead. And we'll do it that way. Let's see here. Oh, I see what you're saying. So it's like the idea is that like throughout the campaign, like as you're going, the DM or whoever's in charge of it would just like it wouldn't be a predetermined treasure. You would be there to like you would come up with something. I think I understand what you're saying right now. Okay, so that's the kind of scenario you're looking for. So then let's see here. So what's the question then? Are you like asking if I know a place to find a group that likes that, or your advice on how to do that? And maybe there was a question in there and I'm just too dumb to have picked up on it. Which is people will say I'm being mean to myself, but it is certainly something that's happened to me many times before. Yeah, there's so many spiderwebs to choose from. Looks like Spider-Man went just absolutely nuts in this room. It's like the scene in the Tobey Mac Spider-Man when he's like in his room and he's like slinging the webs all over the place. I just want this to be like just absolutely wrecked with spider webs here. Is what I want it to look like. There we go. There's just like a really spiderwebby thing here. I almost want to like impose difficult terrain on the players too because of the webbing. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do that here. Throughout the chamber, then also, whoops. Also, the webs are so thick, and well, let's say so thick over the ground that it is difficult terrain. Boom, there we go. That'll make this a more interesting room right there. There we go. We just added a whole lot of interest to it. Oh, would it be okay to do it for my campaign? So I don't stream any of my campaigns. I'm presently not streaming campaigns. I only stream the world building part of it. So there wouldn't be a way to do it because I only just play with my friends as of right now. So I do not run a game where that would work. Unfortunately, sorry about that. Let's see here. Yeah, I think that's good. I think that's all we need, and that decorates that one. So great. All right, well, let's see. What time are we at? We got 15 minutes. I can get one more room in here. I can definitely get one more room done in here. Oh crap! It's a trap room. Well, okay. I'll try and come up with a trap. I have no idea what kind of trap I'm gonna do in here. Okay, so we gotta figure out how what kind of trap would be in here. So I feel like I a lot of times with caves I'll have traps be like natural things where it's just like, oh, they can accidentally trigger a cave in or something like that. But I kind of want to have this be an intentional thing because this is a pathway to you don't have to apologize. It wasn't a waste of time or anything like that. It's perfectly fine to ask. I just like I say, I don't have a game where that would work, my man. No sweat. No need to feel down about it. Let's see here. So yeah, so I kind of want this to have a trap. I want this to be like an intentional trap that was set by the dwarves because they're trying to protect. Like, this is the pathway to their stuff. They're trying to protect their treasure and everything. And so yeah, like a trap chest or something like that could work. Although I feel like my thought is that I feel like it would be sort of hidden in the environment in some way, shape, or form. Because the idea would be, unless you knew how to avoid it, you could accidentally walk into it. You know what I mean? So like a constructed cave-in. I mean, I guess we could still go with like the cave-in or a pitfall type of thing. That would still work. And it's just like it's constructed and made to be that way. How do I want to do this? Because the other thing too is I want it to be super not obvious. Like, I don't want it to just be like a straight up tripwire or something like that. Could just be, we could just set it up. I'm trying to think about too if there would be like someplace they would want to like funnel the players. All right, I'm just gonna go with, you know what? Forget it. We're just gonna go with a classic pitfall. We're just gonna go with a classic pitfall. We're gonna say, yeah, we're just gonna say classic pitfall trap. The ground is loosely covered with a falling stalactites. I like that idea. That's a good one. Could do something like that. We could do both. Oh, you know what we could do? We could go with the stalagmites and have it be like a natural spiked pit. And we could like have it be goofy like that, or something weird and like double whammy of the danger. We could do it like that. That would be fun, and that'd be a little unique. I kind of like that one. Classic pitfall trap. The ground is loosely covered with a thin layer of stone and dirt, but a large pit with stalagmites at the bottom. Waits for players to fall in, or something like that. Yeah, that's true. You could also do like mechanics and like mechanical traps and stuff like that too. And the good news is too is like we're gonna have to come up with 2 traps at least, because this isn't the only set of tunnels that they have to go through to get to those dwarven mines. So we can kind of use a couple ideas, because I actually do like that idea of something mechanic. Like, what would be kind of interesting. Ooh, you know what? I like that idea. I'm gonna put a little note just in here. I'm just gonna put a note for our next section here. I like that idea of doing some sort of mechanics type stuff. What we can do is we can have, because they're trying to get to the vaults, right? And so they're going to be looking for doors. We can have a room that's like that they'll get to before getting to the actual vaults, they can have a room that will have like fake vault doors, right? And they're like fake doors that there'll be some sort of like mechanical trap, you know, and they can go through those doors and it can somehow trap them. And the idea is like maybe they can have like you know, like there's like another room that the doors then lock behind and they have to figure out how to get past the locked doors or something. I like that idea. So I'm gonna say do fake doors with a trap attached. Hi, kitty. What are you up to, little girl? You coming to say hi? Are you just gonna walk by the door and bother me? Yeah, that's all you're gonna do. You're just gonna walk by and bother me. I know, little girl. No, I like that idea. I like that idea, and I want to use that in the next one. I think that would work really well. I think that'd be very thematic. But yeah, for this one, we'll do stalagmites at the bottom, waits for players to fall in. And what I want to do is set up so that at least 3 characters need to enter the room to be heavy enough to trigger it. Boom. So if we do that, that way we can get more than just one of them. So that way it's more than just the first person to walk in. Make it extra devious and really make them mad at me. I'm not doing my job right if I haven't made my players panic. That's what I say. And so you need to enter the room to be heavy enough to trigger it. We'll say DC 14 to notice something is off. Is off about the floor here. So it's like, and like the reason I want to do it that way, DC 14 to know something is off about the floor here. I don't necessarily want to just be like 14 and they know exactly what it is. It's like DC 14, they know something's off. So like maybe they'll just be really careful when they step on it. And so maybe we can still kind of pull the trick out of our sleeve, even if they kind of identify it, because they're like going to try and carefully walk on it. And they have to like actually be smart enough to figure out what it is. And then maybe on like a nat 20, I tell them exactly what it is. But I think that'd be really fun. I think it'd be really fun. I think that'll be a decent trap. Not every trap needs to be super complicated, right? Sometimes there's just a big hole in the ground that you fall in. Who knows? Alright, let's see here. This chamber is as dark as the rest, and feels well, I don't want to say feels, because then they're going to think that there's a trick involved here. Is as dark as the rest and emptier emptier than most have proven to be so far. Chambers as dark as the rest and emptier than most have proven to be so far. The floor, we'll say the dirt on the ground feels looser and softer than most as you step in. And then we'll say suddenly as most of you, and we'll just say as most of you enter the room, the ground gives out below you. And I'm going to put one more DM note here for the mechanics, and we'll say DC 14 to save and avoid falling into the pit. So it's like if they're quick enough, they can try and leap off. You know, you got to give them an opportunity to get out. So we'll do that. As you tumble, you feel yourself getting cut, scraped, and stabbed by large rocky protrusions coming from the bottom of this pit. As the dust settles, you find yourself, we'll say selves, find yourselves in a large hole surrounded by stalagmites. None of which extend to the top of the hole. So if they're going to just try and use the stalagmites to climb out real easy, nice try. We'll do that. I want to put, actually, Say avoid falling into the pit. We'll say any that do fall take, I don't know, they're level 5 at this point in time, so we don't got to be too nice about it. We can give them a decent amount of damage. We'll say, oh, I don't know. I know there's like kind of, there's rules for like fall damage. Hold on, let me try fall damage here. Fall damage. Let's just see kind of what it is. I always forget what the kind of generalized rules are. 1d6 bludgeoning damage for every 10 feet it fell. So I'm thinking what we'll do is we'll assume like maybe a 20-foot pit, but I'm going to add an extra d6. I might even double it because of the stalagmites. I think that would be good. And then they're stuck in there. So I'm gonna be mean. And any that do fall take, I'm gonna do 4d6 damage for falling 20 feet through all the sharp stalagmites. So it's like they're not going to get full on impaled, but they're going to take a little extra for that. So, but I think that looks good. None of which extend to the top of the hole, and then I'm just going to put, we'll say DC 12. Make it a bit easier for them to get up, especially if they have help that'll get advantage and stuff. But we'll say DC 12 to get out of the pit. Boom. Easy enough. Easy enough. That's kind of all we need to do for that one. Doesn't have to be particularly complicated. Underline, and then we want to go back to our... And then potions. Okay, so here's what we'll say. Potions. I always like to give players a little bit of... a few potions and health buffs in the middle of these large dungeons, so that way they can sort of have a few ways to extend it without always having to come and go super frequently. What we can do, oops. Alright, at the bottom of this pit, you can see the shattered bones of many other individuals who clearly didn't survive the fall as well as you have. Among them are various pouches of travel equipment and the like. I don't know. And we'll just say 2x survival kits. We'll just say that. I don't know, that won't mean much to the players because they'll have what they need, but hey, you know, it adds flavor. We'll do that one, and then we'll say potions. Oops, wow, that was a real butchering of the word potions there. Potions, and then just the usual prescribed. I always do 3 of the, let's see, these ones should be, I think we're at greater health potions, the way I like to do it. I always forget if it's like greater or whatever it is. Whatever the second tier is. I don't know. I don't remember. I'll look it up later. I'll do those. And then I also like to give 3... Oh, this will be really fun. This will mess with them. I always like to give 2 potions of some sort of buff that's a bit more relevant to everything that's happening around. And so I'm going to do... Actually, here's what we're going to do. 1x potion of spider climb. So that way one of them can try and climb out. And they can try to figure out how to do that. Or... 1 potion of antidote, just because there's lots of spiders that can do poison damage and stuff throughout this entire dungeon, so that way we can give them kind of a tool to handle that. So now for this one, decorating this room, not much to do. We'll just put our usual lights in here, just so that players can kind of see a little bit anyway while we're playing. That, get our light tool, boop, 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 and just for flavor, I'm gonna go in here, and we're gonna go to our rock and just sort of like scatter a few like stalagmites, quote unquote, in here, just to make it visually a little interesting and a little more unique than all of the other rooms. Don't want them all to look the same, you know what I mean? So, great. There we go. That's good. That's real good. All right, so I'm looking at the time, and it is almost on the half hour, which means what's going to happen is I am going to take about a 15-minute break, and then when I come back, it's going to be time for some video gaming. We got some good progress done here. Had some cool discussions about different DMing approaches and stuff like that, which makes it a lot of fun for me. I've definitely had a good time with the stream so far. But yeah, I'm gonna take a short break, and then I will be back. And today it's Friday, so we're doing just some nice chill gaming. We're gonna go ahead and play some. We're gonna continue our attempts to build up a trucking dynasty and American truck simulator here. I'm gonna just have more fun with my overlay scenes here. So now that we're finishing up, we'll go over here. So yeah, we're gonna play some American Truck Simulator once I come back, and it'll be a good time. So for everyone who showed up here today, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you guys. So in an effort to continue to sort of grow and expand my stream here, just trying to learn how to do all this stuff in the slow pace that I do, I have added a few other links and resources. So at this stage, I have Discord, which is the one I'm presently most active in, but I'll try and learn how to be more active in some of these other ones, because I've also added Twitter and Instagram to my little network of stuff. I don't know how to use either of those. I've never used either of those, but I'm gonna try and figure it out. I imagine Twitter will be just another resource if you want to get announcements for when I'm going live, if I have to change any streams and stuff like that. I use my Discord server for that a lot, but I'll also try to remember to start using Twitter for that, so if that's your preferred method. So I've got those resources available. Instagram, I have no idea what I'm going to do with that. My first thought is I'll just use that as a way to share the other things I do with my life that I talk about on stream, like little clips of my cat or me doing kickboxing stuff. I don't know. I have no idea what I'm going to do with it all, but it's there. So if you want to be part of the pioneers telling me what stuff is funny and you like and what stuff is stupid and you don't want, go ahead and get signed up for that, and we can start exploring that one together. I also have a YouTube channel. That one's been around for a while, but that's where all the VODs go. So if you want to see other things that I've written, if you want to watch other games that I played, you can go check out the YouTube channel and get that going. And the other thing that I've done, and I hemmed and hawed about this one a lot because I never really set out to do this as a way to get paid, but I have had people ask me how they can donate to me and my streams and stuff like that. So you'll find a link on my Twitch page to a donation page that I've set up through the owned site. I guess you would just pronounce it that way, OWN3D, whatever. It's the system that I decided to try using these overlays with, and they have a donation page. So I thought, okay, you know what? It's there, it's free, it's convenient. We'll go ahead and put that there. So if you really feel the urge to donate to me, if you want to help me grow my stream, my thought is any donations I get through that, I'll just kind of pool up over time until I can use it for upgrades on things like, different overlays and scenes and stuff that people want, getting a better mic, using it to buy different games to play and resources, just using it as a way to sort of put back into, my streams here. So if you want to be part of that, if you want to help me with that, then you can go ahead and check that link out as well. Like I say, I kind of hemmed and hawed because I never really wanted to have this be a money-making thing, more than anything because I don't want people to feel like they have to pay me for me to do this because I love doing this. And the other thing too is regardless of if I'm getting paid or not, I will refuse to have this be anything other than me being in charge of what I create. That's the one thing I will be stubborn and selfish about. The point of this is my own creative expression in the ways that I enjoy doing it, and that doesn't change. But if that's something that you want to support, if you like the way that I do things and you want to see more of it and you want to help me get better at it, then there you go. That's an opportunity. No expectations, but the option is there if you choose. So, okay. Speech over. That's all I got. So, yeah, just to reiterate, I'm going to take a short break, like I say, 10-15 minutes. So if you want to come back and join me for some video gaming there, you can come back and see me here. We'll be doing that. Hey, thanks for the follow. I appreciate that. Monarchy. It means a lot to me. I'm glad you're here. Glad you're here and had a good time. But yes, I'm going to take a short break. I'll be back in like 15 minutes. Oh, I should probably talk about, because it's Friday, next week's streaming. My usual streaming schedule is Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. Writing streams start at 11:30 Eastern Time Zone. You can look at the schedule or figure out when that is for you. But that's when writing starts, and then I always do at 1:30 is when we switch over to do some gaming. So again, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday are my usual days for that. And as of right now, I believe I'll be available for all of those days. But like I say, I have Discord, and now I'll try and use Twitter to give updates if I have to cancel or change a stream. So, okay, that's all of my plugs. Holy crap, there's so many more now that I've added those websites. I'll have to get better at streamlining that little bit of announcement there. But that's all of it. That's all I got. So I'm going to take my break. I'll be back in like 15 minutes. So if you want to come back and drive some trucks with me, join me then. If not, hopefully I will see you next week sometime. Have a great weekend, everybody. Y'all are super rad people. I really appreciate you guys being here. I have oh, you don't see it there? Oh, well, I'll fuss with it. I'll try and get it up there. I appreciate the sentiment. Come check back in a little bit. I'll use my break and I'll see if I can get it going there. I think you should be able to do the tag, or if you do ! Donate. I think it should give you the link. But I don't know if the auto mod that blocks links will block it from like my own links and stuff. But you can give that a try here. But I'll try and get that link going. I'll try and get that going on the break. But I really appreciate the sentiment either way. And if I don't get it today, then you can check back in the future. I'll try and get it going. But yeah, okay, for real this time. I'm gonna go take a break. I'll be back shortly. I'll either see you guys in a few minutes or I'll see you next week. Either way, I appreciate you, and I will be back shortly.